Every episode of The Scene is brought to you by DBS Entertainment, presenters of the Solstice Shakedown, happening June 22nd at The Den at 909 West Avenue in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We're also brought to you by these great sponsors: Team Pluto, The Den Cocktails and Casino in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Hummingbird Guitars, Kathmandu Campground in Sturgis, South Dakota, and J. Rick Music, your hometown music store on 41st Street in Sioux Falls. Remember to join us for the Solstice Shakedown and the Team Pluto Fashion Show, happening June 22nd at The Den in Sioux Falls. Remember to check out Starts and Ends and their new single, Building Today, coming out in June. Welcome into another exciting episode of The Scene. I'm your host, Bubba Starts, and today I'm joined by American pianist and co-founder of the band Little Feat, Bill Payne. Bill, welcome to the show.
Yeah, pleasure, Bubba. Thank you very much for having me.
I really appreciate your time, Bill. I know that you guys are out touring right now, and how stressful that can be. So I appreciate you guys having a little bit of time to talk about, well, the new album and being back on the road.
Yeah, this new record we have with there's a blues album, and it features Sam Clayton, and Bonnie Raitt made a few suggestions for us and was gracious enough to appear on that album as well. And yeah, we're excited by the reception it's gotten, both when we play things live and the album itself. So thanks.
Well, and the album was recorded live, correct?
It was. We went to Memphis to one of Sam Phillips' studios, not Sun, but one of the other studios Sam had. And his son Jerry was there running the show, I guess. And the first night we got in, there was a shooting outside the hotel, which sort of set the tone for everything. I think 8 people were shot, not seriously, from what I understand, but it was Memphis. It's a little dangerous there, and we were let's play the blues. So that's what we did.
Unbelievable, and hence the name Sam's Place. Then,
well, Sam's Place. I always thought we were calling it Sam's Place because of Sam Clayton. I read in an interview with Sam that he said he liked it because it also promulgated Sam Phillips, because we were at one of Sam's studios. So I guess it fits both categories.
Yeah, nothing wrong with a double meaning to everyone, and everyone has their own meaning to it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
As a blues fan, my mother brought me up on the blues. They were raised in Romeoville, Illinois, which is the south, now the south suburbs of Chicago. It was the boonies at one point when they were, growing up in the 60s and 70s. But she, remembers being one of, very few not colored people in the Chicago Blues Cubs, seeing Coco Taylor. And so her love of the blues really has always been deep in me as well, and a big influence on not necessarily my musical style, but one of my biggest bands is the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, of which I noticed that you guys cut several songs that he also cut on a record back in the day. Is there a reason? Is that just good? That's what good blues music is, or?
Well, that's a good question, actually. Mellow Down Easy was one that Paul Butterfield recorded that I really loved. It's and we did a combination of that arrangement, and there's a little Walter tune as well. So we tried to bend both ways on that. But on a personal level, I mean, I played with B.B. King, Buddy Guy, Otis Rush, John Lee Hooker. Let's see, Taj Mahal and Etta James. I got a pretty good sense of the blues as well.
Yes, sir. I would say you do.
So those guys. I think Sam's the real deal, man. Is what I'm trying to say.
Oh,
You
it sounds
know,
like it, man. But it just that's where I knew it from, and it was funny as because I was kind of listening over and listening to the album on a drive, and I was like, I am so like, wow, that's another one. But also, you have a killer harmonica player in the band, and that has to kind of lean that way too. I don't know that there's many guys that are better than Paul Butterfield, at least for my listening ear. And I'm not as studied as I should be, right? But when I think of blues harmonica, that's the top of the list, right?
oh yeah, no, he definitely is. And this guy Bull, who plays with us, he's Sam's tech. Michael LeBeau is his name, and uh, gosh, I'm trying to think of the guy that was. Anyway, yeah, Bull is just fine playing harmonica with us, and very very pleased to have him.
Yeah, it's
Set his
fantastic. Yeah, it's great, and I'm sure. I mean, you just rattled off a who's who of blues music, of who you've played with, but that's not who you're playing with on the road every single night. Can you kind of talk about the bonds that you form with those people that maybe don't have that giant name to them, but that you're making this incredible music with every single night? And I mean, the thousands, I would assume, of people that you've played with in your career.
um, I'm not under. I don't.
And I guess what I'm asking is that, do you have kind of a set band now that you've been playing with? Like, obviously you're the last, original member of the four piece that was Little Feat in 1971, right? The
Yeah.
band looks and sounds much different today. What is the lineup like for you just as a live performance from the live
Oh, I
performance
see. I see
standpoint?
what you're saying. Well, first we have two new members. Scott Sherrard on guitars, vocals. I met Scott on a Doobie Brothers tour, 7 8 years ago, I guess, and he was the musical director for Greg Allman. Um, we also have a drummer, Tony Leone, who's played with, gosh, Ola Bell, which is a band that Amy Helm is in. He also played with Amy's father, Levon Helm. Um, he's played with Larry Campbell and Teresa Williams in their bands. And then finally he was with Chris Robinson, the Brotherhood. So his chops are amazing. Uh, Little Feat is a real band. When we started in 1969, not to go too far into the history, but the philosophy of the group has always been surrounded by a great musicianship, and equal to that, when we can pull it off, great music. So it's a pretty good combination, uh, and it's always been kind of loose as to who we had playing with us, and um, uh, things changed dramatically for us in 1972 when Paul Brer joined um, in Los Angeles, and we had Kenny Gradney, our bass player, and conga player Sam Clayton join us from Delaney and Bonnie. So things kind of solidified at that point, and we still have that sound, which is great, and um, people can make the leap from whatever iteration we've had of this band. It's not like we're. I think to some people maybe, oh, they're just a cover band, but they haven't really heard us, you know. And we just recorded not only Sam's Place, but we recorded with Vance Powell down in Memphis. Excuse me, in Nashville, and we got a new 13 original song record coming out next year. So there's a lot of good stuff going on with Little Feat right now.
I can't believe you get the cover band tag.
Well, when you got enough people together, if there's more than 10 people making an opinion, you're going to hear all kinds of nonsense.
Yeah.
So you just have to go, okay, got it.
You sound just like that band Little Feat from the 70s.
Yeah. I want to say to them, guys, if we played Happy Birthday, we would sound like Little Feat, okay? I mean,
Right.
it's all right.
Well, and
Don't worry about it.
that's what's beautiful. And I'm relative. I mean, I know the hits, right? I'm familiar. My mom's
Yeah.
favorite song is Willin'. Obviously, Dixie. Like people know the big songs, but I wasn't really familiar with your discography until very recently when we kind of scheduled this interview. So I'm getting a history lesson, and listening to the old records, you were uncompromising in we're going to sound, you're not going to bend us to one way or the other. You're just so varied in, I'm sure, your musical influences, right? And you weren't trying to make a sound as so many bands tried to do, which probably kept you from getting maybe commercially, as big as you could have been. But the records speak for themselves. You guys made some killer music, man. I was listening to Gringo just before we jumped on, and the reason I picked that song is because I lived for a year in Mexico, on the run from the law, and feeding my family, my wife, my pregnant wife, and then son, by playing music on the street in Tulancingo. So I was El Gringo de Tulancingo.
Wow. Okay. Bueno, amigo.
Yeah. Sí. Gracias. So we got some people down there that are family to us, that we still keep in touch with through the glory of the internet, right? And they get to watch these children and this little blonde-eyed, blue-eyed Mexican boy, right? Born in Mexico, cool. As pale as could be. But I mean, we were an anomaly. People were looking at us like we were a unicorn, right? And I'm out there, and I tell you what, they love them some Hotel California, Bill.
That's great.
I've never made so many pesos in my life. So cheers to the Eagles for that one. Thanks, guys.
That's right. I'm glad to hear
but
that.
when I listen to, so now when I listen to the new stuff, and especially Sam's Place, you guys are a kick-ass blues band. Or like, there's no denying that. And it doesn't matter what songs you're playing, to me, at least. Like, the blues is all the covers. Who cares if you didn't write that song? Are you giving it what it deserves, what it demands, right? And that's what the blues is. And a guy that I used to play with said you stand and deliver the blues, and it is kind of in that tone that this band plays.
Well, yeah, you do, and it's a love letter to the blues as well. I mean, I left out one guy that I played with, and I played with Richie Hayward and Paul Barrera with this fella, and it was Willie Dixon at Madison Square Garden for a party for John Lee Hooker. So, and John Lee was still alive. He came in with a babe on each arm, and Bonnie was there and a bunch of folks. But that evening, and George Porter was our bass player and musical director that night. But we were back, and not only Willie Dixon, which was worth the price of admission, but Greg Allman, Johnny Winter, and Joe Cocker. So it was a hell of a night.
Yeah, I bet. Bill, the sounds that your ears have heard. I wish we had a microphone inside of them, right? A tiny microphone to hear all of this incredible music that you have made and been a part of and been surrounded by over this, I mean, you've been in music since you were a teenager, I'm assuming.
Yeah, since age 15. I've been playing music since I was playing piano. Started around 4 years old, and 75. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm writing a book called Carnival Ghost, which is my memoir, to try and put that microphone in other people's heads as well. I mean, it's been a great journey for me, and still is. And so I thought, well, let me, if I was just to write about my session work, that would be a book in itself. So I'm taking that business and sort of amortizing it over a period of time, but not doing it sequentially. Just saying, yeah, all right, hey, I'm going over to Barbara Streisand's house to give her the keys for a new song. I don't remember playing. I played on a record of hers called Wet, but I don't remember anything about it, right? And I was talking to Fred Tackett, who's in our band, and he's done at least as many, if not more, sessions than I have over the years, starting with Sonny and Cher back in the Wayback Machine. And we both agreed that, and you would too as a musician, that it's not the gigs so much that you remember. I mean, yeah, you're on the street playing for people at that one point in Mexico, but what you remember are the things that surround the gig. If somebody came up to you and gave you 100 pesos or 2,000 pesos, and somebody else threatened your life. So, I mean, those are the things you wind up remembering. That's kind of the way I go through my stuff. I think the song I played with Bryan Adams, there was a couple of them, but one was called "Everything I Do for You," which was the song in that Robin Hood movie with
Yeah, ended up
Cosner.
being a pretty big song, I think.
It's a huge song worldwide, and there's a great story about that in the book, and followed by how Hollywood works. So let's get Brian to do another movie. This one's the Three Musketeers with Sting playing bass and Rod Stewart. They're the Three Musketeers singing. So um, I flew over to London to do both those, but yeah, there's a lot of stories, man. And
I can't wait to read the book, Bill. That was the hardest. Yeah, that was the hardest part for me sitting down with this. So I mean, we're a small local podcast. We're mostly talking to guys that are just guys and gals, excuse me, that are just starting out, right? We're just trying to capture all of our lives, kind of, and this is how movements and things start. The beauty of the internet has connected us, and I kind of want to talk about that because I didn't realize this, but in your biography it talks about how you were kind of a pioneer in the online community space. So can we kind of talk about that? Early 90s, right?
Yeah, I didn't feel we were getting what we needed from management. They had a kind of a closed view of how to do things. And I thought, well, this tool, the internet, can put you directly in touch with people. You don't have to bypass business or bypass management, augment it, like you do with the way you learn music. What you're trying to do is expand your vocabulary, essentially. So it wasn't a far leap to say, hey, if I can talk to somebody in Sydney, Australia, as easily as I can somebody in Japan or Europe or Oxnard, California, why not make use of that and but become a little more personal with it, other than the way, say, the Grateful Dead were utilizing it, which is they knew about it, but they weren't directly involved with it. And I thought, what would it be like if you were actually directly involved in that and building a community? And what happened, which we should have known, was that people would then go, hey, let's tag up in Minneapolis, for example, and meet together at a restaurant and see who the faces are on the other side of the screen here. And a lot of lifelong friendships were made doing that, in addition to people supporting Little Feat. So I'm going to be writing about that as well. It's a wonderful question, so thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you must be so proud to see a whole world full of independent musicians, no different from myself. I have my own recording career. I release music under the name of my band, Starts and Ends. And I am a huge fan of the Grateful Dead, as you know, pretty much every person you've named in this interview. It's been incredible. But we're all the same. I mean, and you kind of alluded, like,
That's
we're
right.
musicians, right? And the reason that you don't remember it is because it comes in waves. And sometimes that wave is a damn tsunami and you get caught in it and you just try to stay afloat, right? And a lot of guys don't. A lot of guys and girls don't. And this business has taken a lot of good people because they weren't able to do that. And I'm in my own little wave right now, Bill. Nothing close to the things that you've been in, but I'm sure you experienced it in small levels in the early 60s, right? As you're playing music. And I mean, you were in, where did you grow up, Bill? Where were you when you were first starting your music career?
Well, I was in Ventura, California, and when my teacher died, it coincided with when my dad had to move up to Santa Maria to work at Vandenberg Air Force Base. So he'd been to Point Mugu and Ventura. But I joined my first band when I was 15. And I auditioned to play my first band as a drummer, not a keyboard player. They happened to have a keyboard set up in the room. I walked over there, kind of standing there and playing, and they go, wait a minute, you play the keyboards? I go, well, I guess. And
Good enough. Here we are. We are
come
decades
on,
later.
guy, wake up.
Yeah, Bill. And honestly, Bill, it's so funny that you say that because that's how this podcast happened. 3-4 months ago, I was still working as a welder in a factory. And
Yeah.
I was releasing some music now, right? So I'm doing the local news hits, and growing in a small market is very good because I have access to all of those local news and radio and all of those things. There's no competition really for all of that. They need
Hmm.
content too, right?
Right.
So I'm getting very visible. I just played a 3,000 seat amphitheater with Armchair Boogie, who's a great
Nice.
Midwest newgrass band, right? And we went out there and we held our own on our biggest stage. The next day I woke up, I drove to Minneapolis to go play the tiniest bars for no money, and just to go be the small fish again, and to realize that if you want to do this, you can't just be big at home, and you're not
Hmm.
headlining that anyway, right? You're just happen to be there. So trying to take that energy and move that out, and to see what comes back. And I'm touring a lot. Like I said, I'll be touring when you guys are in Sioux Falls. June 28th, all of our listeners in the South Dakota, Sioux Falls area, make sure you go see Little Feat then. But just riding my own wave and being in it.
Yeah.
And it's I tried to tell people that, I'm just trying to stay afloat, because the wave is going to end, right? Like eventually it settles down, and then you're trying to catch the next one, right? And to use
Yes, sir.
surfing as the analogy, I think, is the easiest thing that I've found, is we're just trying to stay on the board right now. And sometimes you're in that pipeline and that wave is 600 feet tall, and guys like Luke Combs or, any of these giant bands. I can't imagine what it's like to even be in a stadium, right? Like my vision kind of ended at that 3,000 level. And I mean, I'm sure you've played every stage in the world over your career, but do you find that you like one kind of setting more than another for the music that you can make? And let's just focus on that, not necessarily for like the energy of the crowd and everything, but like for the music you can make, because it is a little bit different on a bigger stage, I'm finding out.
Well, it is, but with the technology of the in-ears, which a lot of people shy away from, um, I used them, and I used them when I was working with Jimmy Buffett, and we played, was it Foxborough, in front of 60,000 people, and there wasn't any difference between that and playing, a smaller 3,000 seat venue. If you got the right people working it, I should say, if you have the right monitor engineer working it. So, but in the old days, I would prefer playing like a theater, let's say. Um, Warner Theater, it comes to mind. There's a theater down in Texas, in Austin, the Stephen A. Austin Theater, I think it was. I can't remember, but those smaller theaters were really a great venue. We played one of the Carnegie venues in Pittsburgh last night, a wonderful little place, and with Los Lobos, and that was great. So, but yeah, I don't mind if I'm in a bigger venue or a shed during the summer. It's bring it on. I don't. I kind of my philosophy with it honestly is I don't. Some people are like, oh, they stick their toe in the water, right? And it's like, no, I dive in. I'm in there to swim, man. I'm in there to play music, and I do the same thing when I'm in the studio. I'm not there to audition. I've got the gig with whomever it is, with Bob Seger, or I know I'm dropping a lot of names, but at least I work with those folks, and
Well, I
you're
mean, I
not
would
there to.
assume that you would call every single one of these people friends of yours. So it's not like you're just dropping their name to drop their, and you've worked with these people, right? And as
Oh
musicians,
yeah,
right, I have a long list of people in my phone that are friends of mine that I work with, that I don't
yeah,
look at any
that's it.
differently than you guys all rode this massive wave, right? The world was so much different. It was so much smaller back then. And I think that's what people don't understand about the 60s and 70s and the growth that was happening, and the explosion of the youth, right? I don't think people now really have a history of like what the world was then. Especially like my wife is 10 years younger than me. She's 28, and I'm looking at kids that are 18. My kid didn't know who Elton John was when I was like, hey, Elton John said really nice things about this guy I'm about to interview. So I went and grabbed my record. I went and grabbed Yellow Brick Road, and I was like, this is Elton John. I'm failing as a father if you don't sit here. So he's up right now listening to Yellow Brick Road or Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and getting a musical education. So he knows, kind of the music. and my kids listen to good music, right? Wife's a huge 90s
Sure.
country fan, so they know Jimmy
Yeah.
Buffett and you know, all the Alan Jackson and all the big stuff. Mom loves
Yeah.
country, and that's where we live. I'm in farm country in southeast South Dakota. You're going to be here visiting very soon, and you'll see it for yourself. And yeah, like you said, it doesn't matter where the stage is and how many people it's in front of. When you really lock in with your people and with your band, and having a great monitor set up to that, right, is so key, just
Yeah.
from a professional musician standpoint. And that's getting comfortable with the in-ears is something that I'm still working on. I'm a barroom strummer, you know,
Hmm.
and just kind of starting to put more of my original songs that I've written over the last 20 years and putting them out and releasing them on the Spotify, and simultaneously starting to have these amazing conversations with other musicians and artists that have these amazing stories to share on this podcast. So it's it's a really cool thing that I've fallen into. And next thing you know, you're talking with Bill Payne and you know, his new album where Bonnie Raitt is a guest performer. And you guys have a long history together, correct?
We do. I always thought I met Bonnie at a particular time, and I must have met her earlier because she's in one of my. I started compiling notebooks or data glance books in 1973. And Bonnie's one of the first names in it. So I guess I met her back then in LA. But I wanted to share something with you too. When it was 1974, I think, we were over in Europe playing. Um, the Rolling Stones came to hear us in Job Eden Hall, which was just outside of Amsterdam. And that was kind of intimidating, but we played, and you're looking over and looking at Jagger and Keith Richards and whatnot. But in the dressing room afterwards, I go down there, and it's Keith. They're all there, but I walked. Oh, Keith, and he grabs and he pulls me. And he goes, "Oh, mate, we're all part of the same cloth." In other words, welcome to the club, Bill. And I just, I read his biography, and he was in a dressing room with Little Richard and I think Muddy Waters and those guys. And he said, "Man, those are the cats. I must be one of the cats too because I'm down there." And that's really what he was sharing with me. You're in this club, as Groucho Marx said. I'd never join a club that would accept me as a member, but you and I, man, we are in the same club with each other. It doesn't matter where we've played or whether we've played worldwide or whether we're local within a certain area. We're experiencing the same things on that level of being a musician, and that's the club we belong to. And I like to share that with other musicians because it's um, again, most of us wouldn't care to be a part of something of that, but in fact we're a part of a rather exclusive thing, and we ought to embrace it.
Indeed. And that's really, I appreciate you saying that. For me and all of our listeners, a lot of our listeners right now are the same people that are being interviewed, and other fans of theirs are the bands. Like, we're kind of just like our only fans right now, and our little fan bases are growing, and
Hmm.
we're all looking. So we have our Midwest Country Music Organization, which is it kind of spans through the Dakotas and mostly from the Minneapolis area down into Iowa, and just a organization of us, right? A club to belong to, but a nice little network that we're able to form. And I think it's so validating for our young people to hear it from someone like you, and especially people from a small area like South Dakota, where you don't have interactions with people who you feel like would validate you, right? So you saying that on this podcast is going to touch so many lives, and I'm so happy that you took the time to share that. And thank you, Bill, because it's going to mean a lot to not just myself, but to a lot of other people as well that are out there, maybe just learning to play an instrument, right?
Sure. Well, learning an instrument is that's the other thing. Um, uh, from a long time of playing, I studied classical music as a kid, but I had a teacher who said to my mother, "I'll make sure Bill knows how to play music, read music, but let's not take the magic out of it for him." So I was able to play by ear as well. And what I would say is that while you're learning your instrument, um, there's a few different paths. You don't have to read music to play, obviously, and I don't even recommend that you try reading music. But like John Coltrane used to do, learn a few scales. They don't have to be anything exotic, but know where you are on your instrument. So if you're in the key of D, you got two sharps to contend with. If you're in A, you got I think it's three. Um, but know where you are on your instrument with things. So when you're playing, I was who's not Bill Gates, but the other guy, Paul Allen. We played his 50th birthday party up in Juneau, Alaska, uh, and he was going to sit in with us, and we're at the sound check, and he was kind of getting nervous about it. And I looked at him before we got up and said, I said, "You know how to play in the key of A, don't you?" Because he wanted to sit in on Dixie Chicken. He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Well, bring your bleeping guitar and let's get up there and play some music."
Yeah. Yeah, and
So that's what we did.
Yeah, it's not like Dixie Chicken is a super complicated song if you know how to play music, right? And that's what people don't realize. They're like, oh my God, I could never figure it out, right? And I was so blessed that I had really great mentors. So I came up probably about the same age. So I played drums in 5th grade concert band. So I kind of got the concert band level, played that all the way through 9th grade. Loved marching band. I loved playing in the marching band and rapping the snare cadences, and just really loved that rhythm part of it, right? Played bass and jazz band in 7th grade, and probably would have stuck with bass, really enjoyed it, but the bass that the school had was one of those PV solid oak ones that weighed like 30 pounds, and I weighed all of like a $110 maybe, right? So it was a little disproportionate. I was like, this sucks, man. Who would ever want to do this? And so I picked up the guitar the next year. My dad and my uncle both play guitar. My uncle Bill actually has a beautiful Gibson Dove from the 60s that he still has at home. And so I grew up with guitars around me. And so when I finally landed with one in my hand, what it really unlocked with me was I was already writing words. Words were coming easy to me. That wasn't ever a thing. I had things to say, Bill. So the connection between the guitar and the songwriting aspect is where it just kind of locked in. And I mean, I started writing songs almost immediately, and I don't read music. My dad handed me a Mel Bay chord book from the 50s that he learned on, and it was like, learn E, A, and B. Let's rock some Deep Ellum blues.
That's right.
And we were off and running. I mean, the Grateful Dead really taught me music because I was learning all of these songs that I grew up with that I absolutely loved, right? And I think you got to kind of start with the songs that you like. You can't be learning just kind of silly songs once you've gotten to a point, right? I think to get that passion, you really play these songs that you're passionate about. So I was playing these Grateful Dead songs and getting introduced to all of these different chords and these different patterns and the way that they played. And, having a deep root in the love of blues and being able to hit a 1-4-5 and the attitude of the blues of get your fucking guitar and let's go,
Yeah.
So shout out to,
I had the pleasure of writing 20 songs with Robert Hunter.
I mean, that's probably my favorite song. I mean, nobody spoke to my heart more than Robert Hunter, right? And has gotten me through more in my life and those songs that I'm attached to. So forgive me for almost driving off the road when I saw the email come in that Little Feat was interested in doing an interview.
Man, this is good. The thing with Robert Hunter too, just to guide that just a little longer on this on his subject. We started off with him just sending me lyrics, right? Which was fine. And then he goes, probably 3 or 4 songs in, he goes, why don't you just send me some music and we'll reverse it. And I go, okay. So we did that for a while. I mean, it was, but at one point I don't know, 15 songs into it, I said, man, because I never met the guy. I never talked to him on the phone. We did everything by just internet and email. And it was incredible actually, and they're complicated songs. I mean, but I said, look, Robert, the music is in the lyrics. That was my compliment to him. And his compliment to me was, but it takes a composer to draw them out. And, but we had a really, really good relationship. And I was, obviously, very, very knowledgeable about what he had written with Jerry Garcia, and some with Bob Weir until Weir started getting involved with his lyrics, which he didn't like. So, band stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
and that's
there
what
we
it is.
go.
I am, not immune to being sensitive about things, right? I can chop my
Hmm.
songs up all I want to, but don't you dare come at me with a pair of scissors, right? And
That's right.
sometimes I come around to my senses, right? We're all human, right? And what a
That's right.
blessed life that you've lived to touch all of these beautiful humans that have just made incredible music. And I hope through this podcast that you're able to connect with a whole other generation of younger musicians and to give them
Hmm.
that validation, because we don't have many of you left that
It's
lived
true.
that world. So I really hope the book comes out. If you ever want to record more conversations about it, I would love to talk on you. It's an absolute pleasure. I know that
Okay, sweet.
you are touring, and that I'm sure you have a busy day. Are you playing tonight anywhere?
We are in Cincinnati, where this whole shebang started in 1970. Um, we were at a place called the Reflections Club, and Richie Hayward, by the way, our drummer back then, God rest his soul, he was from Iowa, but he lived when he moved out to California. He was ensconced by California and Kooky, lend me your comb. Uh, Ed Burns from 77 Sunset Strip. People can look that up. But he um, he got frustrated one night about because we played this place two times, and the first night was a Christmas Eve, or excuse me, Christmas Day, but the place was packed with people singing football songs, Ohio football songs,
Of course.
and they weren't listening to us. So he came up to Lowell on the 26th of December 1970. He said, "Can I introduce the band?" We go, "Yeah, go ahead, I guess." So he goes up there. He has a sausage in his pants. He takes it out, cuts the tip of it off, and takes a bite. And he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, little feet," and no response whatsoever. Right? Goes back to the drums. One, two, three. Some expletive and launches off into the song. What we didn't realize was that there was probably about 5 or 6 people that were there that were integrated into Little Feat's fabric over the years that did see it. Craig Fuller was one of them that later joined us on Let It Roll 40 some odd years later, or whatever it was. Some of the guys from Showco were there. A couple guys that work with Warner's were there, and on and on. It was like kind of a Dickinson tale unraveling because we didn't think anybody saw it. So it was cool stuff.
Right. And I think that's almost why you have to, and maybe the blues kind of ingrained this in me too, that you have to attack every single show as if it is your first and
Hmm.
simultaneously your last show. Right? Like, this is your shot, and every show needs to be that. Not just like, oh, I'm looking at this one moment. I'm looking at these big, oh, I have to be on this stage. I know every single time is your moment, and you have to deliver in all of the small moments to get a shot at the big moments, right? You're creating that energy, and this show that you played to a packed house that couldn't care less about you, right? Has
Yeah.
5 people inside of it that end up being, the fabric of the history of Little Feat, and I think that's important for our young listeners and our young artists to realize, and listeners of this show, is that, like, I tell our people close to us all the time, we are in it right now, right? Like, everyone needs to
Yeah.
just keep doing what you're doing, and I think we're growing and we're getting somewhere, right? And conversations like this are that kind of validation that we need, that yeah, you are reaching out and you are part of the club, and like, just keep doing what you're doing, and we'll see you on the road. We'll catch you at the
Yeah.
next show. So I love it. This has been an amazing conversation. If I start to talk about Bonnie Raitt, I would keep you on here for 3 hours, and I don't want to do that today. But I would love to. I don't need a commitment on a date, but I would love to have you on again in the future for what we call a Sunday conversation, which is where we have a little bit more time to go in a little bit deeper, right? And not kind of confine ourselves to a 30 to 45 minute format. So
Sounds good, man. Thanks so much.
Bill, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope that our young artists glean a lot of wisdom from someone who's seen it, done it all, played with everybody, and yeah, I really appreciate your time. I know you have a busy day, so we'll let you go. Is there any dates other than I guess June 28th, obviously in Sioux Falls for our listeners? But is there any other dates on the tour calendar you want to plug?
Oh man, well that's
That's a
I
publicist job,
think that
huh?
the easiest way to plug it is just go to littlefeat.net and check out where we're going. I'm like a lot of musicians. I mean, I don't I know where I am going for like the next couple of days, but where was I 3 days ago? Sometimes I don't remember. And this schedule that we're on, I mean, we're like booked into there's a Cayamo cruise next year. I think it's in February, maybe March, and so we're booked a long way out. We're looking at playing the Byron Bay Festival, perhaps in Australia. That I've played 2 or 3 times anyway, and I've been to Australia 10 times. So life is a warp speed. It's like Star Trek. Let's jump in the spaceship and go. And so yeah, I don't know where the hell we're going.
Amazing. That's amazing. And I hope that we all get to experience that in our lives and just to be swimming in it, right? And it's been such a powerful year that it's hard to believe that you're not, right? And when we speak to people, they believe it. And yeah, there's a lot of belief going on right now. And I'm really looking forward to the next 10 years. And I'm so happy for you guys to still be able to tour and to share your music after, 50 years as a band. And congratulations on a half a century of making music as Little Feat. That's incredible, Bill.
Yeah, no, I kind of stop and pinch myself and look. I mean, we have the tools we have are our instruments, what our influences are, right? What we share with people are either other people's songs or hopefully our songs as well. And as you said it when you were talking about your songwriting and your propensity with lyrics, you do it because you have something to say, and that's the other part of being an artist is really what is it you want to contribute to the conversation out there, and it can be a little intimidating when, I mean, Brahms, going back in the classical history, Brahms heard what he called the footsteps of giants, and who he heard were Mozart, Bach, Haydn. And I think I mentioned Beethoven, but so what we hear are Bob Dylan. We hear Reverend Jack Elliott. We hear the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, on and on and on.
Jackson Brown's got to get a shout on this show. I know you guys work together
Brown,
too.
well, Jackson's in my book, man, because I played on his what would have been what was his second album called? But it was the one before Late for the Sky. But I played on that record. I actually got Jackson to play piano because he was trying to get me to play like him. And I go, play me this song, would you? And so he did. I go, is there any earthly reason you're wasting my time and your money to get me to play like you? You play it.
Yeah. Can we just sit on that for just 1 second? Is it I mean, like you said, it's absurd. You're talking to Jackson Brown. Like, why are you paying me to play piano on your stuff? Were you intimidated in that moment to no, dude?
No, not at all. I mean,
right.
I wanted Jackson because he used to hang out with Lowell and me at Lowell's house. So we knew each other. But I thought, no, let him play. I already played piano on one other track. So this is some other thing he wanted me to play on. So I said, in the future, if you want me to play on one of your albums, I'll take direction, but I want to put myself into it as well. So Late for the Sky came up. I didn't play on that, but the next album following Late for the Sky was The Pretender. So I played on probably 3 or 4 tracks on that record, and one of them was Here Come Those Tears Again. So I got a chance to put my 2 cents in, which was great. And Jackson and I go back a long, long way, man.
Yeah, that's incredible. Right. Yeah. I talk about him because he's one of my heroes, right? That's the vision I have of Jackson Brown. He's your buddy.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's where, it was so cool to, like I said, to get the email and to have an opportunity to just have a conversation, right? And to capture it for the archives and to have this out there now. And so people remember all this great music. Like, I feel like there's so much coming out now, and we're inundated with so much music that doesn't have any soul in it anymore, right? I know we're getting AI generated stuff in pop music. Like, there's just what I'm about is creating community and making great music with people, right? I don't mind electronic instruments or electronic production or any of that stuff, right? But I don't need the computer to make it all for me and feed me, what it thinks that I would want. Like, that's not music to me. So we're in a very precarious time too in music. So capturing this and touching on the last bit of the analog world, right? And being able to share this was great, Bill. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, listen, man, have a great day. Everybody out there, crack on, as they say, and I'll do the same here. I really appreciate talking to you. It was a great conversation.
Excellent. And for everyone else, this has been The Scene. Find us on Spotify, YouTube, or at listen.to/The Scene. Follow us on all your social media channels and make yourself part of The Scene. The Scene has a special shout out for these following sponsors. Kathmandu Campground in Sturgis, South Dakota, featuring the finest accommodations for family fun. Dry cabin and tent camping, or bring the RV to one of their over 150 pull-through RV sites. Go to KathmanduCampground.com to book your trip today. And be sure to book early for the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally the first weekend in August. That's Kathmandu Campground in Sturgis, South Dakota, off exit 34, I-90. Go to KathmanduCampground.com to book your trip today. A special thank you to J. Rick Music on 41st Street in Sioux Falls, sponsors of the Songwriter Showcase at Monk's Ale House, 420 East 8th Street in downtown Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Remember to support all of our sponsors and tell them that you heard it on The Scene.